மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
Welcome back, guys, and moving on to another exercise. In this game, first of all, you should recognize the structure just right away. We've had this position several times already. And after Black's next move, rook to e8, the threat is very clear. Black just simply wants to play e5, so White plays the very standard knight e5, prophylaxis against Black's plan, and also creating some good attacking potential. So going forward here, trade happened on e5, knight d7, and then f4. And after f4, the pawn is nicely reinforced on e5. And f4 maybe seems a bit weakening because it moves the kingside pawn in front of the king, maybe giving it less shelter. But White's not concerned about weakening the king, as Black has a very hard time attacking the king. It's safely on e1. The other arguments why f4 might not be the most preferable move is this bishop on g3 now has less of a purpose in the position. But as we'll see later, the bishop has some potential to come to h4 in some lines to help participate in some attack. So going forward here, I really like the way White played. After queen b6, queen b1, hitting the pawn on h7, and defending the pawn on b2. It's a nice multi-purpose move. I should note that queen c2 also looks playable, but the reason why queen b1 is played is because if Black ever plays c4, White could then take on h7 in this case. But White is basically just preserving the c2 square for the bishop in certain lines. So going forward here, after knight f8, White plays bishop f2, and actually bishop f2 is an important move because if c4 were to be missed, let's say White castles and c4, then Black is winning the pawn on e3. So bishop f2, defending e3, making sure that c4 does not win material. c4 is still played, and now bishop c2, so White is able to maintain this battery. Even though this setup looks kind of passive, White still directs some pressure against the king side. So queen c7 played, knight f3, and then Black begins some sort of pawn storm on the queen side. And I do like what White did here. White played this move a3, simply slowing Black down. There's really no reason to allow Black to play b4 right away. And a3 does a nice job of slowing it down, because after a5, Black isn't yet threatening b4, because after take there would be a pin on the a file. So this gives time for White to simply castle, which was played. And after bishop d7, White plays knight g5. And this is a moment which... after knight g5, it basically provoked Black's losing move, the terrible blunder in this position, pawn h6. So let's take a look at what happens after h6, and then we'll take a look at what could have happened if Black played a better response. After h6, the win is very simple for White. Very direct move, bishop h7 check. And the thing that I think Black overlooked in this game is the fact that f7 is not defended. There's so many other sort of setups or configurations of the castle king where the f7 pawn is defended, but in this case, the move that Black would like to play, king h8, just runs into knight take f7 checkmate. So it was a pretty unfortunate blind spot for Black. And if we take a look at the other line, if knight take h7, then the queen can come in, and Black's king side is completely falling apart. Probably the most direct line to win here is queen h8, take on g7, threatening to capture on f7. So let's imagine pawn take knight, and now White can keep the checks coming. After queen take g5, the king is forced back to f8, and then a very nice sequence after queen h6 check. If the king returns to e7, then the bishop can come to h4. Now we finally see the bishop come into play. And alternatively, if the king were to go back to g8, still bishop h4, and checkmate is just unstoppable. White has the simple plan of not only bishop f6, but also potentially rook f3, and Black has almost no defensive resources in this position. So going back to right before the losing move, let's imagine Black doesn't play h6. Probably the best move for Black to play is g6. And this would prevent any immediate tactic from White. But this is actually another exercise. And I know this is not included in the 50 tactics that a student is supposed to solve before the course. But I would like you to think in this position and try and find the best continuation for white. Okay, so I know I didn't give too much guidance. I didn't give any clues, like what should white be up to. But I will talk a bit about the position, given that it's a very closed structure. And of course, white would like to somehow carry through with the attack. But the best move in this position is actually a very common positional type of move that we see often in these structures. Now, it's important to note one of white's biggest advantages lies within having the bishop pair, having both the light square bishop and the dark square bishop. And the big problem for white in this position is this bishop on f2 not being the most productive piece given this sort of pawn formation. So the strongest move for white, and the move which basically facilitates white's position to be improved further, is the very straightforward pawn e4. Not only freeing the bishop, but also aiming to basically fix white's pawn structure, as white does have double e-pawns. And now the e-pawns are pretty much guaranteed to get traded. If we imagine black plays some move like d take e4, then the knight can come into e4. And now we can see the potential of all these very weak dark squares, the knight wanting to land on f6, the bishop having potential to come in to c5 and d6. So taking on e4 probably wouldn't be a great move for black. But meanwhile, there's some tension, and white is ready to open up the position. We can look at another line here. Perhaps the best move for black is to play b4. And then, okay, there is a threat of perhaps b3, which would force white's bishop back to d1. So white can simply play queen e1 here, have the queen come to a better square, supporting e4. And now if b3, the bishop can now go back to d1, bit more harmonious setup. And white has so much potential from this position as the bishop is ready to come to f3, exert more pressure in the center. And also this bishop on f2 can very nicely land on c5 and hopefully for white eventually d6. And when the position opens up, the bishops just come to life. And if the bishops can just come to better squares, then white's position is going to be a lot more pleasant, and black will have to suffer for a long time. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. This was a slightly easier tactic, given, or actually I should say that this bishop h7 move was slightly easier than some of these other positions. But I hope some value can be gained from this, and I will see you guys in the next lesson.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.